My name is Christina Dent. I'm a proud conservative Christian, and I'm trying to end the war on drugs.
It has been 40 years since President Nixon declared a war on drugs.
We have tried this experiment for over 100 years. It is not working. For my whole life, the drug crisis was somebody else's problem. But my whole life changed when it became my own. I have never used an illegal drug in my life, so this is not a story of a radically changed lifestyle. It's one of a radically changed mind. And if I can change my thinking on this topic, anyone can.
This is Stand Together Presents, stories, ideas, and advice from changemakers tackling our biggest challenges.
My husband and I, we got a call one day, and it was for a little baby boy who was coming straight from the hospital after his birth, and he needed a foster family. Hey, Beckham. You finally woke up. Beckham was removed from Joanne's custody because of her prenatal drug use. I took Beckham to his first visit with his mom, Joanne. I turned around, and there was a woman running across the parking lot towards me with tears streaming down her face, and started kissing Beckham, talking to him, while I stood there awkwardly wondering what on earth is happening. This is a mom who used drugs while she was pregnant. And yet what I'm seeing in front of me is a mom who deeply loves her son. I was so confused. If she wanted the baby this much, why wasn't that enough to overcome the addiction that she was struggling with? I felt really suspicious. I felt like surely this can't be real. The more that I got to know Joanne, the more I began to see drug use and addiction is not about bad people doing bad things. They're people who are suffering in some way, and they're trying to feel better. I could see putting her in prison was not going to fix her addiction problem. It was going to leave Beckham without a mother who clearly loved him and wanted to be there for him. This is not a criminal justice crisis. This is a health crisis. It created this war in my heart over what I had always believed about people like Joanne. I had to change from a concerned foster mom into an investigator of the war on drugs. I wanted to know, what have we been doing and what could we do differently to get better outcomes? It makes sense why many of us are concerned about drugs. Addiction, overdose, crime, broken families. Many of us just want drugs to go away. But I came to see that it is the drug war and not the drugs that is creating so much of that harm. Let me explain why that is. There are 3 categories of harm as a result of the war on drugs. The first category of harm is that the substances become more dangerous. If you look at a college football stadium where alcohol is prohibited, outside, when people are tailgating, they're drinking beer. But when they go inside, they start drinking hard liquor. Why is that? When you prohibit a drug, it becomes really important to get the biggest punch in the smallest package. With today's prohibition of other drugs, we have the same problem. We have very potent substances being smuggled in very tiny packages. There's contamination, there's high potency, and there is now a razor-thin margin between getting high and dying. We are not decreasing overdose deaths by prohibiting these substances. We're making them more and more likely to happen. The second category of harm is the market. When you have a product, whether it is Tylenol, tomatoes, or heroin, you have someone who's producing it, someone who's buying it, and the actual product that's changing hands. When you criminalize a market, when you force it underground, you increase the amount of crime and violence. During alcohol prohibition in the 1920s, there were people who were still selling alcohol, the Al Capones of the world. Al Capone was making millions of dollars while law-abiding businessmen had to close their doors. The same thing that was happening then is happening today with other drugs and the gangs and cartels that are selling them today. The drug war overlooks the basic economic truth of supply and demand. The third kind of harm is the human toll. Instead of responding to people who are using drugs or struggling with addiction as people who are hurting and need help, we have responded to them as though they are criminals needing punishment. This creates traumatic situations for them and everyone in their lives as they are disconnected from family, community, employment, housing, all of the things that we know help people overcome addiction. the criminal justice system takes all of those away. We are putting people like Joanne in prison every single day. The United States has over 350,000 people sitting in prison today on a drug charge. We have spent over $1 trillion over the last 50 years trying to use the criminal justice system to fix an issue that is a health issue. And it creates the conditions where they're actually more likely to use more drugs. The more trauma a person has in their life, the more likely they are to want to use drugs to numb those painful experiences. No wonder it has backfired. What surprised me the most on this journey of learning is that all of this harm is so utterly preventable. One country that has stopped arresting consumers for drug use is Portugal. They did this about 20 years ago, and what they have found is that their injection drug use rate dropped in half, their addiction rate dropped by 1/3, and their drug-related crime also dropped. They went from treating consumers as criminals needing punishment, and they returned to treating them as regular people who might need health care. Instead of trying to traumatize people out of their substance use, we could focus on helping them build a life they want to be fully present for. We don't always get outcomes like Joanne and Beckham. Joanne was given a second chance, and she took that opportunity and ran with it and has built this amazing, beautiful life for herself and for her son, and is now helping other people who are struggling with the same things that she struggled with. There are no perfect solutions to any problem in our world. There are only better solutions. We're going to have to step outside of our comfort zones and have real, honest, respectful dialogue about shifting the way that we are approaching drug use and addiction. At End It for Good, this is what we do. We're holding book discussions and talking with people in the community, sheriffs, doctors, healthcare providers, recovery groups, all of the people who are impacted by this issue, because we know that everyone wants a better solution, and we would get a lot better outcomes if we spent more time trying to understand why people are using drugs rather than just trying to force them to stop. It falls on us as a society to decide what kind of laws we're willing to support. We can continue to pick up the pieces of the millions of lives that are being shattered by the drug war as we speak, or we can stop breaking them in the first place. This war had a beginning, and it will have an end. Let's end it for good.
Stand Together partners with changemakers tackling our biggest challenges. To see more stories, follow our channels. And to learn more about how you can partner with us, go to standtogether.org.